Do we have a quorum or not yet?
No, we do have a quorum. And then Kim, Erica will be clerking today's meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We are live now.
I'm here too also, Director Scalzitti.
Good morning, Joel.
Good morning.
Okay, we are live.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 17th Special Districts Advisory Committee meeting, the last one of 2021. I had hoped we would be in person by now, but thank you all for participating virtually. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask that the secretary call the roll, please, to determine a quorum.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so the roll call, Kimberly Thorner,
Present.
Jack Beebe,
Here.
Paul Bushy,
Here.
James Gordon,
Pending.
Tom Kennedy,
I'm here.
Albert Lau,
Here.
Hector Martinez,
Here.
Marty Miller,
Here.
Mark Roback is absent. Joel Scalzitti,
Here.
Mike Sims,
Present.
Oliver Smith,
Here.
Robert Thomas is absent. John Van Dorn.
I'm here.
So we have a virtual quorum.
Thank you very much, Erica. With that, I would like to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you have an American flag for the screen for us? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Please rise and join me in the pledge. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to do things a little bit differently. I also ask if you're not speaking to please mute. We're going to start with, rather than end with, committee member reports. This is an opportunity for roundtable if you want to talk about anything relevant going on at your agency or in the region. Does anyone have anything they would like to share today as part of the committee?
I would.
Thank you, Joel.
We in my agency we got accepted with a large WIFIA loan. We're supposed to have a news press release, and I'll make sure all you guys get it sent. We're pretty excited about getting the WIFIA loan. It'll help us tremendously on some projects that we're having.
Fantastic. That's great news.
Yeah.
That's great.
Joel, are you picking up some shifts as Santa over Christmas, or just working on your beard?
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to share?
This is John Van Dorn over at North County Fire. I just got an email this morning from the chief. I believe we're in line for a grant. I don't know the specifics of it, but another $1 million+. So that's going to go a long ways to updating facilities and hopefully getting our new station and Station 4 done at some point in the next 5-10 years.
Oh, that's fantastic as well. I like hearing all these agencies getting the funding that they need and deserve. Fantastic. Okay. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share?
We just got $1 million from the state in the arrearages program for our customers who are back due on their water bills, which was surprising, but welcome.
Did you have $1 million in arrearages?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, then that's good that you got
I mean, in the ag business, there's a lot of people that have huge bills who don't pay and then go bust, and so it helped a few of them out. But the ag guys weren't eligible who were listed as ag. Is really residential. And oddly, even construction meters were eligible under the state rules. So we got every penny we could. And of course, and I hope my thing is correctly mirrored, We also were recognized a few weeks ago as a top workplace in San Diego County. So
Oh,
we
fantastic.
even had that a few years ago.
Yes. Yeah, I think we were one of the first public agencies to get it. So congratulations on that. That's fantastic. Because I like that one. That one is voted on by your employees and they don't know what they're doing when they do it.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a genuine award. All right.
Congratulations, Tom.
Good news. So, Lehman Hine, I will offer, I wasn't going to offer, but I found out that we got about $44,000 in COVID relief funding under the $100 million relief program from the California Department of Finance. We opted not to apply for the arrearages program because our arrearages have disappeared. And so we went instead, you could go one or the other. We went for this and we got $44,000 basically for additional expenses that we had during the last couple of years to for with our employees and additional. Jack, you had something?
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
You
I'm
were in the
good.
midst
I'm
of it.
good.
Yeah, I was just going to note that, we had a project that we had in the works for about 75 years that we just got done. So we're actually now producing our own water project with Camp Pendleton. So starting this year, about half of our water is going to come locally. So that's a exciting project. Staff's getting used to running a treatment plant, but all in all, it all went as well as it could.
Congratulations on that. It seems like litigation and projects sometimes go 75 years before they achieve results. Yes.
Right. Yes, litigation. Sure.
Congratulations. All right. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Thank you guys for sharing. Great news.
I think Mark has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see the hand. Mark.
Okay. Anyhow, on the arrearages program, interestingly enough, of the $1 billion allocated, only about a third of it was claimed. But the question I had, if anybody knows the answer to this, are any of those funds available for sewer, or is that just drinking water?
I believe it was just drinking water. It was a drinking water arrearages program for shutoffs. I don't believe you can shut off people's sewer.
Well, no.
Right?
No. Well, I thought that was in terms of people not paying their bills, though.
Correct. This was in terms of arrearages on your water bills where you had shut off notices from not paying your water bill. I do not believe it was available for wastewater.
Well, I guess I'm wondering then, have you heard, is the state going to be making funds available for sewer? Obviously, any and all of, districts throughout California that have water and sewer customers. I mean, obviously that's important.
I know, Kim, they were talking about it. Someone had raised that issue and it was being discussed, but I don't think anything's been, by the time they figure that out, I suspect we're going to, be on the downhill side of this, but I know it was being talked about, that issue.
You're saying that just knowing how slow the political process works.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're getting their arrearages now when, some of the accounts have already paid. So that's, they went pretty quick. I thought it was going to take longer, but that's, I know they talked about it, but I haven't heard anything being promulgated associated with it.
Right.
And I think also I would add, Mark, that it's a little bit difficult. A majority of agencies collect the sewer bills on the property tax rolls as part of your property tax payments. So that one is probably a little bit more difficult as well to ascertain what's actually going to get paid or not as of right now.
Right. Well, some do, some don't. I mean, I don't think. Anyhow, I think a number of them still pay regular bills rather than on the property tax.
Okay.
Hey, Director Roback, this is Chris Palmer from CSDA. The water arrearages program you're speaking about does include wastewater.
Oh, it does? Well, good.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. I thought I had read it didn't, so that's why I was asking the question. All right.
I'll send you a quick email and some more information on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for that information. Okay, it looks like I have Mr. Abbott, your hand is up.
Good morning, everybody. Steve Abbott, Fire Services Consultant for Lafco. Just wanted to put something on the radar screen that may pop up in the near future, and that has to do with an item that Lafco had contemplated several years ago with the dissolution of CSA 107, which was the Elfin Forest Harmony Grove Fire District, without getting too far in the weeds, one of those issues was incorporating a previously undesignated island of paramedic ambulance service to move into CSA 17, the San Diego Ambulance District. So that's an item that still has not been necessarily fully resolved. So you may hear more about that in the future.
What is the outstanding issue?
Well, in a nutshell, that portion, which you might consider the northeast portion of CSA 107, it is technically does not have a paramedic service provider. That doesn't mean that it isn't getting paramedic services. It absolutely is. It's getting it from Rancho Santa Fe Fire District. That area is within their fire district, so it's getting first response services. In addition to that, it's getting automatic aid paramedic ambulance service primarily from San Marcos Fire District and secondarily from CSA 17. As far as county EMS is concerned, their feeling is it is in their mind resolved. However, in Lafco's eyes, not necessarily so, because there's an area that doesn't have a designated paramedic ambulance service provider. So we're still working through those issues behind the scenes. Maybe more to come, but we just wanted to put that on everybody's radar since this kind of fell off the radar screen for a number of years, and it goes all the way back to about 2016.
Wow. Okay. Well, then hopefully we do get that resolved, and if need be, we can hear that item at a future date. I know that definitely interests my district in particular, with both Rancho Santa Fe Fire, Elfin Forest Fire overlapping for response in our Elfin Forest Recreational Reserve. So I'd be interested to see this one resolved. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any other comments before we move on? Okay. All right. So now we are on to business. Our first item of business is item 5A, which is approval of the meeting minutes from September. They are included in your packet for review. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
I'll motion Bushy.
Thank you, Paul. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Jack.
Thank you, Jack. So with the first and a second, Erica, could you please call the vote on this?
Sure. So the roll call for item 5A for the minutes, Kimberly Thorner,
Yes.
Jack Beebe,
Yes.
Paul Bushy,
Yes.
James Gordon,
Yes.
Tom Kennedy,
Yes.
Albert Lau,
Yes.
Hector Martinez,
Yes.
Marty Miller,
Yes.
Mark Roback,
Yes.
Joel Scalzitti,
Yes.
Mike Sims,
Yes.
Oliver Smith,
Yes.
Robert Thomas is absent, John Van Dorn.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 13 in favor with 1 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you, Erica. Okay, so now we are on to item 5B, which is an update on the adopted work plan for 21 and 22. And Keen, are you taking this one?
I'll go ahead and take this, Chair Thorner, and just for the video audio record, Keen Simons, the Lafco Executive Officer. So this is our quarterly check-in for the Special Districts Advisory Committee to tell you what we're up to in terms of progress as it relates then to what the commission set out to be our goals for the fiscal year. In a nutshell, we're proceeding as planned. If you take a look at, I believe, page 11 of your packet, and maybe it's easier. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
I believe if Do lets you.
If
He
Do
gives you-
lets me,
if he
the
gives you
power
permission.
has been revealed. Okay, so let me go ahead and just share my screen, and I appreciate, you're not going to be able to see all of it, but we have 30 projects for the fiscal year. The first 10 are really the priorities, and hopefully, and by way of body language, you can tell me if you can see the first 10 somewhat clearly. Thank you, Chair. And what I wanted to do is just kind of walk through these first 10 high priority projects, let you know where we are. And then I want to drill down on two in particular that I know are of heightened interest to special districts and have in some iteration been discussed with the committee, and I certainly anticipate being discussed in more detail in the next few meetings. But just going down sequentially, we are going to be presenting a discussion and an overview of the highest priority project we have for the fiscal year. That's the Fallbrook MSR. So I'm going to defer that to a little later on in the agenda. As Chair Thorner and Jack and Tom can attest, the ad hoc committee for the reorganizations is slowly but surely kind of coming to a pivotal point. Our professor, our consultant, Michael Hanneman, is due to release a report any minute now with his final thoughts on some key issues relating to Fallbrook and Rainbow's requests to leave the Water Authority and join Eastern Municipal Water District. And in particular, and again, I would anticipate today or perhaps tomorrow, the report being released, the professor will weigh in on financial impacts for the remainder of the 22 member agencies of the Water Authority. So that is coming to a pivotal point. We anticipate having a meeting on January 10th of the ad hoc committee where in some substantive way, I am going to ask each of the 10 members, and again, 3 of them are on this call, to provide their thoughts on whether this document that Michael has prepared has sufficiently addressed the questions. Not that they agree with everything that's in the report, of course, but whether they believe that the information provided is ultimately going to position Lafco to make an informed decision. That's the threshold for the committee. And if not, what is missing? You may see behind me, Dew and Priscilla, who are in the office today. We've successfully relocated to the downtown area. We are enjoying the energy of the downtown. And I can say with some authority, I don't think any of us miss the Kearney Mesa campus. So that's been a good move. Escondido service review is coming along. That's going to be presumably presented by Priscilla in draft form at our February meeting. I'm going to skip over our talk on items 5 and 6 for the time being, but the rest of the top 10 projects that we have in some iteration are moving along. Now, I want to talk first and foremost about legislative proposal 56133. So, and let me get off the screen here. Hold on one second. Okay, so about a year or so ago, LAFCO staff came to you and said the commission is interested in resolving what we see as a blind spot in this particular section of law that says to cities and districts, if you want to provide services outside your boundary, which we really don't like you doing because we do like boundaries and we like syncing them up to your service areas, but there's a process and you come to LAFCO for a yes or no with some exceptions, and those exceptions are written into the code. It's certainly our belief in our practice that LAFCO is the decider of when those exceptions apply. But as you experienced when we were bringing you an MSR for discussion on some of the resource conservation districts, not all boards and general managers are attuned to our thinking, and it gave way to a broader discussion at LAFCO about the need to kind of firm this section up to make it explicit and again, what we believe to be the intent of the legislation to say these exemptions of when cities and districts need to come to LAFCO are determined by the commission or the executive officer. Certainly, that line of thinking holds as we've now gone through about a year of kind of slow outreach on our end to kind of develop some consensus to move forward with a proposal for legislation. I think we've presented and had this discussion with this committee a couple of times in that process. I know that now that we are moving towards engaging potential authors, CSDA, and I know Chris is on the call, has some, I don't know if the word concern comes up, but maybe some pause, I'll use that word, some pause about, well, what does this mean? Is this going to create more hardships than it solves? I would say, of course, no. This is a remedy, not a poison. This is a remedy and not a poison. Maybe there are others on this call that want to explore either sides of that discussion, but I want to just give the committee an update that we have Adam Wilson and Priscilla Allen working on our behalf on this with Cal LAFCO. And if there's ways to improve our intentions on this, we're all for it, but this is an issue and it's a priority issue for the commission, not just LAFCO staff. Chair, if I can also cover the other item, commission rule number 4, and then maybe open it up for discussion. All of you presumably got in your email box yesterday something for me that was a very rough but thoughtful effort at LAFCO staff to update this policy that the commission has had on its books since 1975, and for the most part has been left somewhat alone since 1975, and that is what we call Rule 4. And Rule 4 is our implementing measure at San Diego to guide how we go about our legislative duty. It's a duty, it's not discretionary, to oversee special districts services with respect to both functions and classes, right? Function being, okay, what is essentially the umbrella activity, and then classes, what are those subset activities that fall under that one broad activity? Paul Bushy was the first to help illuminate to LAFCO staff a few years ago that our policy was outdated. Others, including the resource conservation districts, in particular, you will call Upper San Luis Rey, came to this body and wanted to be in the business of groundwater management. When we looked at our policy, we had issues trying to reconcile. So what we have done in this very broad effort at LAFCO staff is try to modernize this policy, both to provide more clear direction as to what is the process at LAFCO in determining what special district X's service functions and classes are, and then also to distinguish in advance what service classes and functions we contemplate agnostically, irrespective of a particular agency. So, and I know that there's some hands up, but bear with me for a second. Let me see if I can pull up this document quickly. I also like the power of just this pause of silence so you can all get in ready for what is to come. Hold on. All right. All right, let me share my screen. All right, so all of you will see, and it's also posted online, will see a red line version of our initial attempts to reconcile the world today in special district service functions and classes with our responsibilities and statute to essentially regulate it, not to restrict and or become, as the term bureaucratic might come up, but to make sure that it's orderly. So the things that I want to kind of emphasize here is that there are three key issues that we're trying to be clear about. One is the existing document does not contemplate divestitures, right? It only contemplates this idea that special districts are evolving and expanding. Well, we know, and certainly through the legislation, that districts also wind down particular functions and or classes. So that's the first issue that we wanted to implement in this update, to contemplate divestitures. We also want to make known that when it comes to the document of record, from Lafco's perspective, and there was confusion and different opinions when Lucchese and Carlsbad had came to this committee a few years ago about which is the document of record in terms of determining when a district has an active service function or class. We want to be explicitly clear in this update that it's in the MSR, right? Unless there is some, unique circumstance that special exceptions can be made. But going from here on out, your MSR is the document of record of determining what your active service functions and classes are. I also want to address this rather unique aspect of law that merits a whole lot more discussion, but I want to at least put it on your radar. And that is, I think there is this misperception, even among some LAFCOs, but certainly among special districts, that it's a one-time deal, that when LAFCO makes a determination of what a special district's active functions and classes are and where those actions are, it's a one-time determination. Well, if you read the statute, it's pretty clear to our staff that it's an ongoing determination, that it's tied every time we do an MSR, that we revisit that determination. And while certainly not ideal, committee members, that we may change from one MSR to the next, I certainly wouldn't anticipate that being the norm. I think the code is rather clear that that possibility exists, i.e. that LAFCO may evolve its thinking as to where, Rainbow's water service area is. And I say that just because Tom's a good sport, and I know that he appreciates the example being made out of Rainbow. That merits more discussion, but I wanted to put that on your radar. But now here's the chart that got a whole lot of lawyers in discussion a while ago. And in the existing rules, 4.4 is our matrix, where in 1975, we attempted to identify all the services that a special district would provide, a function, right? And then also in 1975, we attempted to identify the subset classes that those functions may take the form of. I would love for the committee to really scrutinize this table and, based on your expertise, help us fill this out appropriately. And just for the benefit of Steve Abbott's assistance, I want to give you the example of fire protection. So through Steve, I say, hey, what are the main classes of fire protection? And he has said to me, well, with a working thought, it should be structural and wildland. Okay, that makes sense. Well, what about when we talk about emergency medical? And Steve says, well, probably 3: dispatch, first response, paramedicine. I offer up those examples because I'd love to talk to other fire protection providers, but also the water, the wastewater, the cemetery, and get your expertise to help distinguish what are fair categories in this document. So I'm going to stop there, Chair. I know that I've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time, but I really want to start engaging the committee on this topic. I ultimately want to go to our commission in April with a draft of this document. So that gives us, about 3 to 4 months of dialogue. And Chair Thornton, you may recall that a few months or probably a year ago or so, you created a subcommittee on this topic, but I think at least one of those members, Mr. Arant, is no longer on the committee. So maybe thoughts of reconstituting a committee that we can work offline over the next few months in perfecting, and then probably identifying the areas of conflict or differences of opinion between Lafco staff and the subcommittee, and then bring our perspectives to the full committee at the next meeting. Because I have no doubts what Lafco staff sees the world on certain topics may be of difference of opinion of the committee members. And then we want to highlight that for the whole committee to weigh in on. At the same time, we discuss whether we want to give you per diems. So just putting that out there as a bit of a carrot. Nevertheless, Chair Thorner, with your permission, I'd be happy to answer or take at least questions and see if I can answer some questions.
Okay, absolutely. Why don't we start, because there were 2 items here, the legislative proposal and commission rule number 4. Since commission rule number 4 is fresh in our minds and it was just on the screen, interested in feedback and comments on the rule number 4. Obviously, this just came out last night. I haven't had my opportunity to review it in depth. And quite frankly, I started looking at the definitions and trying to apply it to real world practices, which I'm sure a bunch of us are doing. So at the end of the comments today, I would be looking for, from each of those categories, fire, water, wastewater. I think we had ambulance, anybody who has expertise to volunteer to be on this subcommittee so that we can work this out and maybe bring this back at a future meeting. So with that, Mr. Kennedy, do you have comments? Your hand's up on rule number 4. Thank you.
I have comments on both of the topics, but we'll start on this last item. And I think that maybe dovetailing what Paul's going to ask, one of the origins of this was the Leucadia Carlsbad thing a few years ago. And I see that disposal had the words included via discharge or reuse under wastewater class, but it would then there's a reuse or recycled water separate class.
Yep.
Which includes the wholesale and retail of it. Would an existing agency such as Leucadia then be given by Lafco a second service class here under recycled water for wholesale and retail distribution, or would that just be presumed if you had a reuse disposal method that would include those classes?
That is a great question.
It is a good question. Right now, it could go either way. And so the chart is this agnostic. Here are the possibilities. And when we were to do an MSR on Leucadia, we would give thought to what would be the most appropriate designation. Now, Tom highlights an important evolution that we're trying to make here. So the existing chart contemplates loosely through the word reclamation that that's the authority of only wastewater providers, and that's their domain. What we are suggesting, and again, this is rough draft, maybe I completely do a 180 through the input of the committee next time. We're suggesting that this get broadened out so potable water providers who do not provide or do not produce the wastewater themselves are able to get in the business of recycled water.
All right. So my other question relates to the definitions, and I did have an opportunity this morning to pull up my copy of CKH and look through how CKH defines the word class, and it does not. It describes classes in various ways, but it isn't among the definitions included in CKH, at least in the version I have, unless it's been modified since the one I have. But here, we define class means a subset activity in the performance of a district function. Now, that I'm just trying to get my head around what that means or where that goes to. How deep down does subset activity go? And I know that part of this has to do with, I know there's been discussion about the arrangement that Fallbrook and Valley Center have for doing sewer cleaning, using some Fallbrook equipment and things like that. But I'm wondering how deep, what is a subset activity in the performance of a district function? You know, because the way I see a service or class of service, a service that we provide is wastewater service to our customers, right? And people flush their toilets and we make sure it goes away and gets treated and disposed of. But underneath that, there's a whole lot of things we do. We contract with odor control maintenance companies. We contract with sewer TV companies. We contract with all sorts of different activities that make up the sum total of things we do to provide the service. And so does this mean that Lafco is going to get involved down in the nitty gritty of each and every one of those things, or what? And so I'm trying to figure out what the guardrails are or the boundaries of where this definition lies.
Yeah, good comment, Tom. So the definition that we have offered up is ours ourselves, as Tom correctly notes. The legislature has seen fit not to define class in CKH and has left it presumably for each of the 58 LAFCOs. And so that then your second part goes, well, how far are the guardrails on this? How far into the weeds or how far up do we get? That goes back to the matrix table of 4.4, where we're trying to illuminate the guardrails. So for example, for potable water, we're trying to identify just 3 classes that would be meeting LAFCO's interests: wholesale, retail, and groundwater management. There certainly would be related in a whole bunch of things that go into that, storage, whatnot, yada, yada, yada. But in terms of distinguishing for purposes of boundary significance, right? So the fact that you might have a cleaning activity tied to, your potable water retail service that, may be provided in variations in your own boundary in terms of comprehensiveness would not be of interest to LAFCO in this policy. But the level of where you're retailing versus where you're not retailing in your boundary would be. And so we need help with our table as we go through each individual service to understand, using your words, Tom, what are good guardrails.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Paul, you have your hand up?
Thanks, Kim. I was just, like Kim, I just looked at this. I haven't looked at it as carefully as I want to, but I know we did have a subcommittee that was established, and I had volunteered to be on that subcommittee when I came on the board last year. And I think that's the appropriate forum to really kind of dig into this. And I'd like to re-volunteer for that committee if that's okay with the chair.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that, Paul.
That was my only comment.
Okay. Thank you. Al, I see your hands up.
Good, thank you. And good morning, everybody. Hey, Keen, I just kind of, again, I haven't apologized. I haven't had a chance to really dig into this very in depth. But, as you start categorizing things, and as with the potable water agency, all of us have a bit of a crossover with the fire prevention, for example. Many of us have contracts with fire departments in terms of maintenance of the fire hydrants and fire services. So can you, using that example, can you kind of at least shed some lights for me in terms of how that it's interrelated with this? So I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that's an interesting connection, Al, about the fire component and the hydrants. And for the most part, going a little further into the terminology of a guardrail, we try to, at least for the functions, identify what does the principal act of a particular special district contemplate. And so for most water service providers, right, a municipal water district certainly has the ability to provide a form of fire protection. So, if we were to do the MSR on Rainbow and they were actively providing some kind of hydrant, maybe it would be appropriate to say they've activated their fire protection function, but it's limited to a class of, hydrant maintenance or something. I think that's a good example, Al, of how we're trying to connect the dots on the micro level when we do an MSR. But here is this, again, this holistic document where we make it broad enough. We make this policy broad enough where it's like going to the Cracker Barrel. Like you'll find something on that menu that you can eat. But it, presumably with some appropriate framework where we're just not contemplating everything and anything, but we're producing a document that's scaled to then meet individual needs of an agency. I will say this, Al, I will assume, because I had not thought about the hydrant issue, every time we do an MSR at Lafco, there is a new wrinkle to, we need to figure this out when we get to our update on Commission Rule number 4. I would assume that there will be ongoing updates to this document going forward, but the document does need to be updated this year. It's just no longer, I think, providing staff or the agencies good direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I see your hand up, Oliver.
Yes. I wanted to support Tom Kennedy in his comments, in particular on how small an agreement between various districts needs to be on the Lafco radar. Again, hit the point that Tom made about Valley Center borrowing a particular piece of equipment for, say, 2 days to do a clean out. Something like that is a normal maintenance activity that falls within our normal process. And I would agree if we're talking about, having to borrow 3 trucks for 10 days each. That's way over the limit as to what I would see as just low-level agreements between groups. And I don't see Lafco needing to get involved below some defined level. And I brought this up at the last meeting that, Lafco, can focus on the major functions, major money transfers, whatever you want to call it, whatever threshold you want to use. But I think below a certain point, it's counterproductive. It really doesn't help the individual districts, and it's more work than it's worth, to be honest with you. It's the way I look at it. So that's my point.
Thank you, Oliver. And Tom, I probably did a disservice when you were your comments initially. I was thinking as it relates to the update on Commission Rule number 4, but from Oliver has helped me identify that we're now speaking about the proposed amendment to 56133 and the provisions about when cities and districts need to get approval from Lafco on outside service agreements. So Oliver, what I would say there is, I think you're right that Lafco stay above the Mendoza line, right? Of, something that is substantive versus something that is less than substantive. I think by practice, we do that. And here's my plug as to why the proposed amendment that Lafco staff has artfully drafted is a winner. And that is right now, without the additional language that says exemptions as determined by Lafco or the executive officer, without that add, arguably, we could come in and simply say everything is subject to going to the full commission. That the commission itself would need to have a formal discussion on the exemption application, the appropriateness of applying any application as a part of a full-on application process. What we are attempting to do is to provide the agencies, and you're welcome in advance, this streamlined opportunity to call the executive officer and say, hey, I've got a clean out arrangement with Valley Center Municipal Water District. They're going to be working, or I'm going to be working in their boundary. Is this an issue? And I would say, no, thank you for the check-in.
Okay. And my point would be, why should I have to go to you below a certain level? Below a certain level, it should be completely transparent to you. And I'm just asking that that level be defined so that we can continue our operations without undue impact.
Agreed.
And if I could clarify my comments on the article, or the section 4 there regarding the definition of class, wasn't necessarily related to the next item we're going to discuss, but it is tangentially. But here, where we are now defining class in a way, as you indicated, the legislature has decided not to. We just want to make sure we're careful to make sure we define it in a way that we don't get too far in the weeds, because subset activities, depending on how they're characterized, could be different. Now, if we were to take the table that's attached and say that the class means the subset activities listed in the table below, and that is limited to those things, and then, Lafco takes a very wide angle view, which I think, based on the number of folks in your fancy offices downtown, which I've yet to visit, then those would be, it'd be more acceptable, because then that would presumably preclude getting too deep into the weeds on, let's say we have a deal with Ocean Center or wastewater. We make an amendment of that thing for some minor technical reason. Do we need to go through Lafco to amend our wastewater treatment agreement that's been in place for 30 plus years, and those kind of things? So I think that's kind of the guardrails on the definition of class and what a subset activity is that I was referring to. I have other thoughts on the other matter we'll get to in a little bit. Thank you.
But Tom, I do think they are tied in that what agencies get designated relative to their functions in their class and what they have service agreements for sometimes can overlap, right? You like fire and water, sewer and water, recycled and water. And so I do think we confuse them easily because we're concerned about how far do each of these go down. All right, Jack, I see your hand up.
Sorry, my computer mouse freezes on me. I was going to kind of move to the second item because it seemed like we were moving there anyway. So I think the first one we seem to wrap up. So, I think I understand the intent of it, of the language. As I gave it more thought, that the last time we talked, I was generally okay with it. I've gotten a little worried the way it's written. Largely not because I'm worried about where it's going to go with Keene, but that, we don't know what's going to happen in the future with the executive officer. And, if you did get someone in Lafco that decided, hey, they really want to, control everything special districts do, or they want to create a fee structure. So every time we want to request a service, we need to pay a, application fee. What my worry about is, a lot of us are really focused on, how do we really make the most out of the resources we have, especially our smaller special districts? How do we work together better? For example, we keep talking about Valley Center and Fallbrook, them saying, hey, you have a Vector truck, we have an older sewer service, we need, more resources on that, but it's not a fully utilized piece of equipment. So it makes sense for us to work with them to utilize it more. And we're doing the same thing with Rainbow. As it's written right now, my interpretation is, we look at that and go, well, this service is exempt from Lafco per this criteria. Now, my relationship with Keene is I would let them know, hey, this is something that's going on anyway. But I'm just worried in the future we could end up with something as it's written that the executive officer says, all right, well, this looks good. I think I want to take this to the commission or something like that, versus the idea of maybe changing it. So instead of requiring executive officer approval, maybe notification is the other thought, is maybe that won't cause the same level of concern. Because I think there's a little bit of a difference of opinion among the special districts and Lafco in terms of what does that language mean? Does it mean that, we and our governing board can sort of self-determine that we're exempt. Lafco obviously has authority if they, knew about it to say, no, I don't agree with that, versus us being sort of turning that power over to Lafco that clearly says, no, this is something the executive officer has to formally approve before you can start that service. So I'm a little worried about it sort of getting in the way of what a lot of us need to do, which is really kind of work closer together, really looking at sharing services together, going down the road.
Jack, I'll offer like two sides to this. Currently, you have the self-determination, right, in the legislation. That works well when we all partner together. And off the top of my head, I just made a list of 9 agreements that Alevinheim has with Leucadia, with fire departments, with San Diego, with San Alejo, where we share services and we tout those, right? Those are positive, good government sharing. The problem is that it comes before Lafco when it's negative and we tread on each other's turf inappropriately. And I think Keene was alluding to some stuff that happened last year with resource conservation districts, right? And so I think maybe what we're looking for as far as guardrails is how do you reward the good and keep it going so it doesn't become bureaucratic, but then on the other hand, not have the bad actors going out and doing whatever they want. What authority does Lafco have? What guardrails does Lafco have in addition to us? And so maybe that's what we could focus the subcommittee on. Paul, you had your hand up?
Yes. Yeah, just along the lines of what you just said, Kim, Oliver, and also Jack. It's I'm concerned that when I was not that familiar with this until our last meeting, and I did bring up the example of that agreement that Alevinheim and our organization just executed, where we share some equipment that neither of us have and expertise. But my concern again is that we've got so many regulations that are hitting us that this is, to me, another layer of bureaucracy. And if we're going to do something, I understand the need for it, but I think in the case of the resource conservation districts, that's clearly somebody providing a service and another person's service here. That's not sharing services. I think we should continue to talk about this at the committee level. But when we have exemptions, when you have exemptions that are subject to a determination, they're not clear exemptions. And kind of where I would be more comfortable with this is if the exemptions were clearly defined and they were exempt from commission determination. So that's kind of my 2 cents on and the more I've kind of become familiar with this proposed legislation, that's kind of where it would have to go for me.
Thank you, Paul. Tom, your hand is still up. Is that a new hand? It's an old hand. Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments they'd like to offer on either one of these?
Oh, sorry. Are we we're going back to the first one already?
Yes, go for it.
All right. So yeah, I had some thoughts on this. Some of those have been expressed. I think that one of the challenges I know there's 58 counties, but I think there's only 57 LAFCOs.
58.
50, are there 58? All right.
I live in the Keene.
I think some of them are combined, some of the small counties. But one of the challenges I have when it's when we have this sort of process that is, and I'm not speaking of our current executive officer here. I want to make sure that's clear, Keene. But there's 57 other persons out there who may or may not have as aren't as vested in the propriety as we have here. And that when you put the power in the hands of an EO to make a decision, without a clear mechanism for some sort of recourse to the commission itself, or appeal or something like that. So let's say the EO decides, nope, you're not doing that. And what is the remedy, absent, filing a lawsuit or something that the two subject agencies would have? So I didn't see any remedies there within the code as it's written. So there's certain challenge there. I think, again, we get back to, I think, as Oliver was indicating, what are the guardrails on this? How far down in the weeds does Lafco get? And I think there needs to be part of it, and numerically in our in our situation, this process is used for when a single parcel, Jack and I just did one a couple months ago, single parcel that I've got a water main next to, that he's got one that's a mile and a half away, or vice versa. We say, all right, we just do an out of agency service agreement to handle that one parcel. I could see where if you were to say 10 parcels or more, or some lower limit, because for a single process, because once you get to Lafco, then you get into having Keene's going to need an administrative record, right? So for me and Jack to look at our systems and our operators, go, yeah, we can serve that parcel, no problem. For us to produce the documents necessary for Keene to evaluate that in I assume a plan for service and a little one, there's got to be something other than Keene says, yeah, Jack said it's okay, so I say it's okay. I mean, I would imagine he's going to need an administrative record. There's going to be a cost to the preparation of those documents, engineering reports, plans, documents, that may not that cost may not exist otherwise, which would essentially for one homeowner trying to get a water meter might push it over the top of being done. And so I could see where this could be applicable. Valley Center and Rainbow did one for 800 units a couple of years ago. Now, subsequently a filed application, and that was approved by the commission. That was just to keep the project moving through county approvals. And so I could see how that size project certainly would apply to this. But for the onesie twosies, it would seem to me that the out of agency service agreement should be allowed to persist as it is. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone else have any thoughts that they'd like to share either on the legislative proposal or rule number 4? Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So I am now looking for subcommittee members. And I believe maybe tackling both of these issues as they are, I think we said tangentially related. I have Paul, who's volunteered, I believe, for the wastewater. We'd be looking for someone from water, fire, and then also recycled water. All right, so Mr. Kennedy, I see your hand up for water.
I could do recycled, Kim. This is Jack.
Thank you, Jack. And do I have someone for fire? Oh, James, thank you very much. Perfect. Okay. And then Keene, your timeline for comments back on rule number 4, I'm assuming you would want something from us before the next before the next advisory committee meeting here.
Yeah, so what I would like to do is then set up a Zoom meeting with the subcommittee, perhaps in early January at the latest, to perhaps scope out the areas of agreement versus areas of discussion, and then maybe have another meeting late January or early February and go from there. And I do like the idea of having both topics for the committee, just for our benefit. It certainly economizes time.
Yes. One of the things I think might also be helpful is if the committee members, if you could maybe make a list of, because in my mind, I just went through and came up with 9. And I think we talked earlier about defining below some level, right? And maybe we can go through this and kind of get a feel for what it is that we're trying to achieve at what level. Maybe that might be helpful for the first committee meeting to talk about what is it that we're talking about in real life and what we practice. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments on this before? And obviously this was a set of a discussion on the work plan status. Does anyone have any comments on the overall work plan status that they'd like to discuss? Okay. All right. With that, I think we are good to move on. And our next one is item 5C, which is the draft municipal service review on the Fallbrook region.
Thank you. So Chair and committee, Priscilla Allen will give a presentation, and the goal here is to illuminate, as we have in our recent practice, the key issues that we are generating as we do these service reviews, as we start to, mildly perfect each one a little bit better as we go forward. And the questions that we would like to have on your respective radars is ways in which the performance measurements that we use at Lafco can get better as we go forward. And again, this is specific to a handful of agencies, but keep in mind, your comments help us going forward as we continue to evolve this process. So with that, Priscilla, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Keen. So thank you so much, committee members. Again, my name is Priscilla Allen, analyst with San Diego Lafco. As mentioned by Keen, today before you is the Fallbrook Region Municipal Service Review for discussion and feedback. This municipal service review was prepared in-house and focuses on the local governmental agencies serving the area under Lafco oversight. So the Fallbrook Public Utility District, Rainbow Municipal Water District, North County Fire Protection District, which all collectively are responsible for providing water, wastewater, recycled water, and fire protection services within the region. There is a fourth local agency, CSA 81, Fallbrook Local Parks. But due to timing issues, we're going to be adding that going forward to the MSR. Our report follows recent MSRs, and they're all anchored by a detailed agency profile of each of the affected agencies, structured to tell the story of the community needs under statute. The report itself evaluates the local government services marked by independently assessing demographics, service demand to capacity relationships, as well as their financial standing. We then draw on the agency profiles in preparing written determinations, which some take form in actionable recommendations. Before summarizing the report, I'd like to just provide a few key premises of our analysis, with three in particular. One being that this is a 5-year report period beginning fiscal year 2016 through fiscal year 2020. Second, that with limited exceptions, we do focus in on averages generated within that report period, and this is to control 1-year outliers. And third, the report's horizon is 5 years out, and this means, among other things, that jurisdictional changes that come forward within the next 60 months within the region are going to be measured in large part against the analysis provided within our report. And so with that, I'm going to ask you to pull up our PowerPoint. And so the first slide will provide just some baseline information on each of the affected agencies, starting with Fallbrook, and then Rainbow and North County Fire Protection District. Each have their differences. Fallbrook providing 3 active service functions, formed in June 1922 and serving about 34,000 residents. Rainbow formed in January 1954, serving about 22,000 residents and providing 2 active service functions, potable water and wastewater. And last but not least, North County Fire Protection District, having been formed in January 1987, serving 53,000 residents and having 5 active service functions. Next, I'll have do a Google Earth, and just for the benefit of you all seeing the affected agencies relative to the region. And so as he pulls that up, I'll just kind of speak to a few of the 3 affected agencies. So Fallbrook Public Utility District is the smallest in size, spanning 44 square miles, equal to the size of City of Oceanside. Their sphere is coterminous with their jurisdictional boundary. And then we have Rainbow coming in second, and they span 80 square miles, twice the size of the City of Oceanside. Their sphere includes 987 non-jurisdictional acres along its eastern perimeter. And then lastly, North County Fire Protection District is the largest of the 3, spanning 92 square miles. And their sphere is 27% larger than their jurisdictional boundary, extending into Deluz, Pala, and then Riverside County. And so with the invitation to go into further detail, I'm just going to jump into some of the key conclusions and recommendations. And so with respect to key conclusions, there will be 9 that pop up on your screen in short form. Beginning with number 1, this is an introductory municipal service review, and it serves as a dual introduction, one for the affected agencies and their constituents as they are introduced to a relatively unfamiliar planning process with Lafco, And then similarly, the Lafco Commission being introduced to the affected agencies and their service functions at depths that have been previously unvisited. Number two, we've learned that Fallbrook region has slowly and steadily experienced a significant amount of consolidation in local government, with the number of special districts having been reduced from previously 8 to the current 4. The region's success in avocados and agriculture have influenced a mostly rural character in the Fallbrook region, with avocados being the primary cash crop since 1950s. However, we've learned that there have been recent and significant declines in avocado production, and highlighted by the loss of nearly 1/5 of planted acreages during the reporting period, suggesting that growing avocados in the once avocado capital of the world becoming unsustainable, which may have some policy implications. Nonetheless, we believe with respect to growth and irrespective of the influence of avocados in agriculture, it's reasonable to assume that growth will continue to happen in the Fallbrook region. And this ties to the demand for housing as well as the available land supply. As far as demographics, Fallbrook has a distinguishing gray, green, and blue collar population, with residents being measurably older with higher household incomes. However, comparatively low college degree holders, suggesting that there's a relatively high percentage of a blue collar professional workforce. When looking at their service functions, each affected agency has established adequate and excess capacities to meet current and future growth demands, and we've not identified any substantive deficiencies. However, when looking at their financial standing, we do believe there's stress testing underway, as they have experienced clear and measurable financial stresses. They do remain solvent based on their overall net positions. However, recent trends are noteworthy. And looking into the future, there is an unknown case of incorporation within the Fallbrook region, with known past and reoccurring interests to incorporate. It's reasonable to assume that those interests will come forward with formal efforts in the future, given its size and resources. However, for now, many locals are focused in on 3 separate reorganizations currently on file with the Commission. And those involve the 2 separate requests by Fallbrook Public Utility District and Rainbow to change water suppliers, and the 3rd involving Fallbrook Public Utility District requesting to activate its park and recreation, roads, and street lighting functions. And so with that, those were our key takeaways within our report. And again, as I said, some of these tie into actionable recommendations. Most are pretty straightforward, but we do have a couple that are nuanced. And so I'm going to highlight the 6 that are on our next screens. And I'll go in order as they appear in the report. So number 2, we do believe that the loss of avocados has some policy implications, perhaps for Lafco. As some of you know, we are participating in SALT grant, the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Grant. And so we believe that these 2 tie together, and perhaps this could be an interesting case study moving forward. Number 7, we believe we should come back to North County Fire Protection District as part of our scheduled countywide fire service study in fiscal year 2023, and kick the Lafco tires on opportunities in terms of further syncing fire services. Number 9, and tied to incorporation efforts, it's fair to say that, opportunities for consolidation, given overlapping services and adjacent boundaries, might be merited. However, we don't see the need to explore that right now, at least not by our own initiation. And as I was beginning to say, as far as incorporation, we do believe that perhaps preparing an agnostic white report on incorporation opportunities for Fallbrook, so that everyone understands the current prospects relative to current statutory thresholds, may be merited. Number 13 and 14 have to do with the spheres of influence for each of the affected agencies. So for Fallbrook and Rainbow, to date, it suggests that no sphere changes are merited. However, for North County Fire Protection District, expanding to capture their sphere to capture some of its regular service calls in Riverside County may make sense. And so with that, this ends the recommendations and conclusions as part of our report. I do want to thank Jack, Tom, and their staff, as well as North County Fire Protection District staff for all of their help in the drafting of the report, as well as Steve for all of his help. So I'll turn it back to Keen for now, and I'll be on standby to answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. So, Chair, this is an opportunity for the committee to provide some feedback, again, with the idea that we're really looking at structural comments on how the service review is working, or maybe perhaps could be improved, but then certainly specific comments are also welcomed as the committee sees fit on the agencies covered.
Thank you. Excellent report, Priscilla. Thank you very much. I will start. I see three hands. We'll start with Mr. Kennedy.
Thanks, Kim. And I want to first thank Priscilla and the rest of Lafco staff for putting together a really great document. I know it was a long time coming, a lot of work, but it reads really nicely and it's laid out well. And, you know, the content we by and large agree with completely. I think that, you know, there's a couple of things that I did mention at the commission hearing. I hope you all could have heard me there. I know the audio was a little difficult earlier this month, but primarily related to there's some mention in there that with the loss of avocado, we might see additional housing growth there. But I'm sure Oliver or Jack or anybody up here in the avocado growing areas could tell you, come over and walk a grove. There are very steep slopes, not much development going to happen there. So it's a tricky spot to supplant trees with houses. So the other part is that you're correct. Financial stressors are in place for all water agencies, but even more distinctly for agricultural agencies, and that over the last 20 years, the cost of water has tripled, but and our demands have gone down by 60%, which is a tricky economic spot for anyone to be in. And so obviously that's one of the reasons we have other reorganization applications on board with Lafco. And then finally, and I think Jack had, or I forget who it was that mentioned it's before, and I know I did. Well, I know that Chief McReynolds had mentioned it, at least what I could hear in his comments at the commission. The manner in which maybe we can sit down and maybe Kim could designate a subcommittee to take a look at what financial statements from water agencies look like, how to benchmark those across, you know, how to interpret them as being obviously solvent, but what defines financial stress when you're looking at ACFRs, as they're called now, and how do you determine how that's going and looking at trends. And I know it's somewhat nuanced, but you know, we do show sometimes budgeted operating losses, but that includes depreciation, and so sometimes it's difficult to distinguish just looking at bottom line stuff as to what it really means. Our board had a rate stabilization fund, and over a period of 2 years decided to use it to offset some water authority rate increases in order to try to hold the line on rates. Obviously that shows as a net negative a loss of reserves, but that's what those reserves were built for. And so it's hard when you just look at the numbers to figure out what's exactly going on. And so maybe we can have some further discussion along those lines. But mainly, thanks a lot for the great work, everybody on the Lafco staff. And we look forward to doing it again in 5 years.
Thank you, Tom. Tom, I would like some clarification on what you were asking for on the financial stress test. Are you saying that in future MSRs, maybe establishing a standard of what's looked at, like operating margins, percent depreciated as, those kind of things that we report to our board annually, or what? I'm looking for what you're asking for.
Yeah, I know Jack has some comments along these lines. Maybe he wants to jump in.
Okay, we'll skip to you, Jack. Your hand is up.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that. So, you know, I sit on AWWA. There's been a group talking about, you know, developing stress tests for water agencies to help the EPA out. And we've struggled because it is incredibly difficult. So I think as a group, I think Lafco does a good job of trying to pick simple metrics that, you know, do something high level. The trick is drawing conclusions from those. So the way those metrics are written makes sense in sort of a non-capital intensive agency. So if nothing changed during the reporting period, so if you didn't issue bonds, if you didn't have a large one-time capital project, I think you could make some trends out of it. But because of that, I think that the trends in the approach become somewhat problematic to draw conclusions. So you may be saying, hey, some districts are doing good, but maybe they're not, because they're not really fully funding their repair and replacement or capital. So they've got a cash reserve, but they're not really, doing what they need to do from a capital side. So I think it's worth sort of maybe getting a little bit, working with Lafco staff, looking at some of the benchmarking criteria. AWWA, for example, has benchmarking criteria that they've developed on the financial side, and just thinking about how do those match up. Well, what my worry is, and really part of this is for Lafco, not so much for us, is you may be putting something out there that tells a district, hey, you're looking good, you're doing everything right, and maybe they're not, right? And then they get, when they go to raise rates, they get all this pushback because here's a Lafco report that says, hey, your trends look good. You've got another agency that's been raising rates, and Lafco goes, hey, your trends look bad. And so I think you've got to be really careful the conclusions you draw from the trends, in trying to do firm conclusions just from an ACFR for a water agency. Net position for a water agency and asset valuation don't mean much. The book value of our assets doesn't mean anything. They're buried in the ground. So that's what I think it's worth putting some thought into, those of us as water agencies kind of looking at those metrics and maybe helping them a little bit think about, is there other ones, and what can you and can't you conclude from those metrics, just so everyone's really careful on the language. But overall, I just want to say, I think
the tracker, it finally came in.
I think Oliver is on. Oh no, he's muted.
And the other thing I just want to say is, I think the report is very well done. I mean, I think it's incredibly well done. I think I don't really have any concerns with anything. That one just sort of jumped out as me going forward, like, hey, this is something that maybe needs some attention. But I think it's a very well done document.
Great, thank you, Jack. Oliver, did you have comments?
Well, my comments were, I wanted to hear from Fallbrook and Rainbow and North County Fire. So the only one I haven't heard from so far on their opinion on this report is John.
Okay, John, did you have an opinion on the report that you'd like to share?
Yes, I did. Regarding finances and stress testing, we've done a lot within our fire protection district to bolster up our finances. We did a pension obligation bond. We've received various grants and such. So the trend now, outside the window of the report, but after it, has definitely been improving. And so, if there's an opportunity for us to, provide some comment to show that we are in the process of addressing these matters, I think that would be helpful in the report to those who read it. With regards to number 2, consolidation, one of the things we do as a fire prevention district is we perform a lot of customer service surveys, and the degree of public satisfaction with the North County Fire Department is well up there. And just thinking back of the consolidation issues that happened with Julian, if ever those efforts were undertaken by Lafco, there might be great, it would be good to if Lafco had a heads up on any sort of public opposition there might be to something like that. So I would suggest, and I don't know if we as a department gave you that information, it would be something good to do to take a look at the customer satisfaction in the service area. Regarding the loss of avocados, I live in the area. I see other agricultural industry that appears to be growing, the nursery industry, the wine industry. Perhaps there could be a little effort to see what industries are supplanting those that are on the downside. So other than that, the report looked great, and we're all pretty happy with it. We've taken a look at some of the recommendations and are already in the process of implementing them. That's it.
Awesome, thank you. James, you had your hand up, but it's down. Did you still have comments?
No, thank you. Yes, I actually had the same question that Oliver just asked, which is I was going to ask John if he was comfortable with the information in the report and the process that Lafco is taking. And I gather from your comment in response to Oliver's question, you are.
Yes, I think we are.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Jack, I see
Yeah,
you.
I just have one other quick heads up too for Keen and Lafco. Be very careful on corporation in Fallbrook. So that has gone through before, and you know that becomes a very dangerous topic. So I don't, you know, we are interested in a very narrow thing is what we're asking for, just to help some community members. Fallbrook Public Utility District is in no way going to lead any efforts, and that'll be something we'll comment on, just to be clear, because that's going to be an incredible challenge within the community of Fallbrook. So just a heads up that, you know, that issue is kind of fraught with some challenges.
I think they appreciate the heads up, Jack. Okay, does anyone else have any comments? Okay, Keen, is that something that you're interested in, having the members of the committee maybe send over ideas for areas of financial stress and indication that might be considered for future reports?
Yeah, and perhaps, Chair, what you and I and Jack as Vice Chair could do is maybe cabal a little bit after the meeting about how we could go about soliciting in some kind of format, a way to do this, maybe, and I think the agencies would appreciate, maybe not for inclusion in this particular document, but maybe going forward. So maybe we could give some thought about how to do that as we proceed into the next fiscal year.
Okay, fantastic. And I do have some ideas. Our auditors actually undertake that effort for us every year and report to our board, not only in 8 key areas how we're doing, but also how we compare to 10 other agencies. And so I do have some ideas. So Jack will be volunteering you to help with that as well. Okay, all right, fantastic. Thank you for the comments and excellent job, Priscilla. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and so now we are on to update on San Diego Lafco operations, which is item 5D.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So a couple of comments about the evolving world of Lafco staffing operations. So on the staff level, many of you knew Ruth Arliano, who after 32 years of service at the county and Lafco retired. In fact, today I think is her first official day of being a private citizen. So we sent Ruth off in style last week with a wonderful staff event. So Ruth is now retired. Erica Blum, who is clerking today's meeting, has been promoted to executive assistant. And certainly has earned that. And then I see her name. I don't know if she'll be willing to share her video feed. She's a bit under the weather, but we also elevated our graduate intern, Carol Ann Neiman, to staff analyst. So she's a full-time staffer. Carol, are you with us? So I get the impression that's the signal saying she does not want to turn on her video feed, but I'm sure all of you will join me in congratulating Carol in showing her worth as an intern. And then we'll certainly be working with all of you to some degree in meetings to come. And then on our consultant list, Steve Abbott has dutifully come on board with Ed Sprague retiring as a granddad and whatever other activities he's up to at Palomar Fire Academy. Steve's been a great asset so far, helping us. A couple of other additions, names that may be familiar. We've brought on Brian Brady as a consultant to help us with some utility issues in our service reviews, Brian being the former general manager up at Fallbrook, and probably is certainly well-versed on things beyond just water and wastewater, and I'm sure we'll tap into that expertise. And then also I made reference to this, and you saw them at our last meeting. We're also consulting now with Adam Wilson, former land use advisor for Supervisor Jacob, and among other things, Adam is spearheading our Fallbrook ad hoc committee meeting. So wanted to just give you that update, and I'll save some discussion about our website and our logo for the next meeting as our organizational evolution continues. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and congratulations to everyone on the promotions and welcome. So well deserved. I did get to see Erica's on Twitter recently, so that was very nice to see. So with that, we're going to move on to item 5E, which is chair appointments to fill the unexpired committee terms. Fred Cox with Rancho Santa Fe Fire is retiring, I believe, very, very shortly, if not already. And then Cheryl Landrum with Resource Conservation District. I think I've been the GM at Alevenheim too long, because I think this is my 5th fire chief at Rancho Santa Fe Fire that I have been friends with. So I look forward to becoming friends with the next fire chief. So I do have 2 appointments as the chair. Ann Baldridge is the new executive director of Mission Resource Conservation District, has indicated her willingness to serve. And then Keene was very gracious and had discussions with Diane Hansen from Palomar Healthcare. And so I'd like to make those 2 appointments today to fill the unexpired terms. And I believe they both go to 2024. Is that, yes. Okay, so announcing those, and hopefully we will see them at the next meeting. Chris.
Pardon me, Kim. I just want to make a quick correction. Ann is with the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County, not Mission.
Thank you. Oh, you know what? I did misspeak. You are absolutely correct. Thank you for correcting me on that. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And then with that, moving on to item 5F is the selection of chair and vice chair. I cannot believe that the year has already gone by already, but it would be for 2022 per policy.
I move Kim Thorne for chair.
Second.
Okay, I was just going to offer if anyone else was interested, happy to do that, but also happy to serve another year if that's what the committee desires. Is anyone else interested?
You have a motion on the floor from Mr. Kennedy, second from Mr. Lau. So perhaps we could do a roll call.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm interested in you doing it.
Well, I would motion you for vice chair then.
Second.
All right. So Erica, we have a successful motion, a second motion that we can do all together. So motion from Kennedy, Lau for Kim Thorner to be chair for calendar year 22, and a motion from BB Kennedy for, Thorner Kennedy for Jack Beebe to be vice chair for calendar year 22. Chair, I don't think there's any discussion. So if you're okay, can we do a roll call?
Okay, yes, we can do a roll call. Erica, please.
Okay. Kimberly Thorner,
Yes.
Jack Beebe,
Yes.
Paul Bushy. Paul.
I think Paul had to take off.
Okay.
Paul left.
James Gordon,
Absolutely.
Tom Kennedy,
Absolutely.
Albert Lau,
Yes.
Hector Martinez,
I don't believe Hector's on.
Hector, Marty Miller,
Yes.
Mark Roback,
I did say yes, Kim.
okay.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was looking, thank you.
Joel Scalzitti,
Absolutely.
Mike Sims,
Yes.
Oliver Smith,
Absolutely.
Thomas is absent, John Van Dorn.
Yes.
Let's see. So we got 1, 2, 3. So we have 12 in favor, and I think there's 2 absent, so the motion passes.
Okay, thank you all for the support on that. I think Keen told me that I was the longest serving chair in Lafco history, and we just set a new record. So this cannot go on in perpetuity, though. So maybe we transition in the future, and the vice
You
chair.
gotta start screwing up, Kim.
I
Can we make a motion to make it a lifetime appointment?
Ooh.
This is kind of like, this is more looking more like Putin or Z or something. I don't know.
Yes. On the public comments, Chris Palmer, I saw you were on the line, and I didn't ask earlier if you had anything that you would like to share. I would like to share my thanks and appreciation to you for all the support you've been giving, especially on that Special Districts Relief Fund and the email I got from you last night. So I did want to thank you for your efforts on behalf of special districts in getting some of that funding. But did you have anything you wanted to say for the group?
Well, since it's the holiday season, first of all, thank you for the kind words, Kim. I'll be sure to pass that along to our team at CSDA. But since it's the holiday season, talk about the COVID-19 relief funds, the $100 million special districts got, due mostly in part of districts getting engaged, meeting with legislators. I know a lot of people on this call met with legislators with us, and we were able to get it done. So let me give you some numbers for San Diego County. The County of San Diego received $6.268 million in COVID-19 relief funds out of that $100 million. Grossmont Healthcare District got $47,000. Lakeside Fire Protection District got $1.365 million. North County Fire Protection District got $1.459 million. Levenheim got $44,000. Rancho Santa Fe Fire Protection got $1.154 million. San Miguel Consolidated Fire Protection District received $2.129 million. And Valley Center Fire Protection District received $67,000. So really proud of all you guys for helping get this money for the districts that really need it. So that concludes my report, Kim. So thank you.
Thank you for those Christmas presents.
Yes.
Hey, Chris,
I don't get to be Santa very often.
Hey, Chris, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Why did the fire protection districts, a lot of them get so much money? What was why? I'm a little unclear.
Well, I'd have to look at their applications, but a lot of it were overtime personnel costs, PPE costs, revenue loss, things like that. So every district got a little different. And the fire protection districts were left out of most of the COVID-19 relief funding. So I think the state, Department of Finance made all these determinations how much money each district got. So,
fire protection districts are largely funded by property tax revenue, correct?
Mark, if I can add, I am a little familiar because Levenheim went through the process here. One of the conditions of applying for this funding is that you had not received relief for you or your customers in any other legislation or funding. Right. And water received a lot of arrearages payments. And if you had applied for and received arrearages funding, you weren't eligible. So I don't believe, so water departments had to decide whether or not you wanted to apply for this or go for the arrearages, depending on your individual situation. So I would gander a lot more fire departments applied than water agencies.
No, I got it. I was just thinking if they're funded by property tax revenue and property taxes are going up, where was the shortfall on their end? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I think we have some fire protection districts on the call. Maybe they could provide some insight.
Yeah, I'll chime in here. This is Mike Sims with Benita. Mark, it stemmed mostly from all of the additional costs that fire districts incurred serving the public with regards to COVID stuff. I think Chris mentioned PPE, overtime costs. We stood up a countywide testing and vaccination program that took a lot of personnel and overtime. So a big chunk of it were those things.
All right. Yeah. I mean, Lafco is all about government efficiency and not throwing money around. So thank you.
This is John over at North County Fire. I know there is I don't remember the exact specifics, and maybe Steve Abbott, if he's on the phone, can on the line can elaborate more, but there is a large amount of our property tax money that does go back to the state that the state took from us a number of years ago And that remains an issue for fire districts. In addition to that, as we all know, property tax revenues for those of us dependent on those don't keep up with the cost of operation. So there's always that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. With that, I would ask Erica, do we have any public comments? Anyone who has turned anything in during the course of the meeting?
I have not received any public comments.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, with that, we are on to Keen, Executive Officer comments.
Thank you, Chair. So very quickly, our next meeting should be March 18th. So please keep that on your calendar. We'll send out a reminder of the quarterly meetings for all of calendar year 22. Want to congratulate Kim and Jack on your unanimous reappointment as chair and vice chair, and then to the entire committee. We really appreciate at staff the engagement that this committee provides. All of you provide good input both on and offline, and it's proving to be helpful. So with that, have a great holiday break from us to you, and look forward to another good year coming up.
Thank you, Keen. I think we all feel the exact same way about you and the Lafco staff. You got a fantastic team going on. Happy to see a lot of those promotions and additions to the team. So thank you for a job well done. So with that, this is our last meeting of 2021. Good seeing all of you. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season. Some of you I'm going to see sooner rather than later on the subcommittee work. We'll look forward to doing that in early January. Thank you guys all for your time today. The meeting is now adjourned.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Later.
Bye, guys.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.